I suddenly put two and two together. I was like, I'm a photographer, storyteller, and there's a really cool story to tell here. I really need to tell it.
Hello everyone and welcome to Canon Conversations, the show where I sit down with some of the top creatives in the industry so that you can become a better photographer. On today's show, we're going to be having a conversation about arguably one of the most important aspects of photography, and that is storytelling. So how we can go beyond simply making a pretty picture into something that tells a story. And to go in depth with us on this subject, we have Wanaka-based adventure and lifestyle photographer, Camilla Rutherford. Camilla, thanks for joining me.
No problem. It's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to having this chat.
Awesome. And for anyone who isn't familiar with your work, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey with photography, and how you all started?
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I'm actually Scottish, but ended up in New Zealand through default about 18 years ago. I studied art college in London with a strong interest in the theatre and arts, and that kind of evolved into taking photos. So I ended up a lover of the mountains, thanks to my parents taking us skiing whenever they could up to the Highlands of Scotland, and we spent most of our childhood outdoors. And with these two passions of art and adventuring, I found this middle ground where I could take my passion and create a job for myself, which was storytelling through photography.
Awesome, fantastic. And how would you kind of, I guess, describe your photographic style? Because it's relatively broad, but how would you sort of describe your photography?
Yeah, it's a difficult one to try and describe yourself, but I guess over the years I've evolved and into a sort of a storyteller, in that I think from my theatre background, I studied at St Martin's College of Art in London, and I did a 4-year degree in performing arts, and through that I learned a lot about telling stories through I guess through the art of theatre and film. I thought I wanted to be a filmmaker. I made loads of films when at art school and spent a lot of time in the dark rooms back in the film days. And I think through that I kind of I've got this passion of trying to tell as much as I can through a single image. And that's kind of brought me into the style of telling emotive stories through a single image. And I think one of the strongest things I realized when I sort of had the film camera, the moving camera, and the still camera, and I would always go, which one do I want to use? Which one am I going to pick up? And I kept going towards the still camera. I think the single gratification of just getting that moment and knowing that in that second you've created something that tells a story, whereas with moving I had to then take it home and cut it together with lots of other bits, which is an art in itself, but it was something about that instant gratification of getting that single banger that you're like, that's it, I've got it.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I think that potentially has something to do with your link to theatre, because theatre is a lot about the kind of the tableau, the like sort of sort of projecting this sort of finished, almost painting like piece to the audience. You've got this fixed viewpoint, this fixed stage, and it's a lot about crafting little single moments compared to, say, film, where you're jumping around different camera angles and jumping through time and space. And that's quite interesting that you gravitated towards the photography.
I like that. I hadn't really thought about it like that. I think it's I've worked alongside filmers my entire photography career, and very often I'm on shoots where it's clients are getting their bang for their buck. They've got big film crew there. They've got a still photographer. They're trying to kill two birds with one stone. And I work alongside film crews, which I absolutely love because they're great company. And one of the things, you know, I always learn is that they have all this team behind them, and they have, you know, all this gear that they need and everything. And there I am, just me with my still camera, and I'm trying to tell a story that they're trying to tell with this series of montages and whatever. But each definitely has its own challenges. But yeah, for me, the I guess the challenge and the reward is being able to, as I say, capture that story in that single frame.
And I think, yeah, you're right, photography certainly frees you up to be, I guess, more removed from the equipment and the technical side of things, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Like video, the cameras are bigger. There is extra equipment when it comes to microphones and lights, and there's lots of different people doing different jobs. Whereas photography, it is a lot more pure in the sense that you as the photographer are a lot less encumbered by equipment between you and your subject.
You've nailed it, absolutely. And I think that was one of the, you know, I sort of felt like I had two paths and I could have gone this way or this way. And I chose to go down the stills line, maybe because I'm a bit lazy. Or that I'm not a super tech person. I'm very dyslexic. So for all you dyslexics out there, you think in pictures, you don't think in f-stops and all this kind of jargon. And I think the film world, I was just like, oh no, too much. I like the simple act, having a camera and a lens and just me and just, yeah, that's it. So I think that's sort of why I went that way rather than that way.
Fantastic. Interesting. Awesome. Well, do you want to give us a bit of a rundown now on what you're currently working on? What is sort of your sort of photographic professional life look like right now? I'll try and give you a quick rundown of a brief introduction into how I got to where I am. So as I say, I studied in London for 4 years, which I was at the best art school arguably in the UK / the world, and I absolutely hated it. Can I say that? I did not do well there. London was so claustrophobic to me. I was, you know, I grew up in the country just outside Edinburgh in Scotland. As I say, went to the Highlands all the time, skiing and biking, and suddenly being in this city full of art students. And I think that's something that resonates with me now is especially in the world of the arts, is like everyone trying to be really arty and like, you know, follow trends. And I found that St. Martin's was just full of people who are sort of trying to out-art each other. And I just didn't fit in the slightest. Every chance I got, I was on the train back up to Scotland. I was flying out to the Alps to go teach skiing. And anyway, I did it. I finished it. I graduated 4 years at art school. I've got some work that I was really proud of. I made a film for my final piece. And after that, I was like, right, I'm off skiing. I packed my bags and I thought, I'll just do a few ski seasons and I'll come back to London and I'll pursue my film career. I did actually work on a few feature films in the big movie studios in London, and I actually loved that. That could have been me, for sure. I was working in the art department, set dressing and all sorts, and then I went for my few ski seasons, took my movie camera, took my still camera, and that's when I kept picking up my still camera, taking photos of my friends skiing, which was obviously my other strongest passion. And then before I knew it, those photos were making their way into magazines, and I was like, wait a minute, I can ski and take photos and make some money. And I think that was the sort of like, I don't have to go back to London. I don't have to do the proper job thing. I'm just going to keep going until I feel like I'm either not making it or I've had enough. And that has taken me on the most incredible, 2005 I graduated to 2009 when I decided that Wanaka, New Zealand was going to be home for me. And then I met my husband. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. So I was traveling for 9 years, back-to-back winters, did my first summer in 2009. And then I branched out into the mountain biking industry, which was an industry that was, I guess, relatively young at the time. And the bikers I met just welcomed me with open arms. I couldn't believe it. Everyone was just there was no cliques. And I moved into that industry and realized, I can be in one place at one time. I was very ready not to live out of a bag.
And then from there, I started to pick up commercial clients because my base was New Zealand. Now I could start to work for clients like Tourism New Zealand and showcase what beautiful country this is and what we have to offer. And then 2 children later, so I had my first son in 2016, which definitely put the brakes on massively in my career that I'd spent the last 10, 12 years building up, which was, I'm not going to lie, it was a really hard pill to swallow. Anyone that's a photographer out there knows that you live and breathe it. It's part of your DNA, it's part of your bones. And suddenly, I had to say no to quite a few dream jobs. I had to be at home. I didn't have the physical capability. I wanted to breastfeed for as long as I could. And you can't just pack up and leave. You can't just go, right, I'm off for a week's commercial shoot or off because the snow is good here, which I found tough, I'm not going to lie. And what was really tough was seeing my male counterparts carry on. Even though they had young kids at home, they could just go. Yeah. But it's a choice, and I chose to stay at home and be a mother to my 2 boys. So I doubled back in between the 2 boys being born. And now my youngest is 2.5, and I have got more drive than ever. I'm so keen. I think what I meant to say as well is by the time my second son was born, I'd very much learned to come to peace with, not feeling like I had to be out there all the time and shooting and I was missing out on loads and, you're scrolling Instagram and going, why aren't I on that job or why aren't I out there shooting this? But I think by the time my second son was born, I'd come to peace with that and I knew where I needed to be. I know where I need to be right now and it's at home with my boys. So that, I guess, leads on to what you asked me, which was sort of where I am at now and what I'm working on now. And because I wasn't out traveling and going on commercial shoots or chasing the snow, I was at home on the farm with my boys. And that has sort of led me down the path of shooting what our home life is and what it's like bringing up boys on a farm. And that's sort of what I'm working on right now, I guess.
It's that's the common story for mums around the world, right? Like having to balance the family and the work or the passion or the lifestyle and figuring out that journey. I'm sure a lot of mums can relate to that. Absolutely. And
it's not super easy, but we get there.
I definitely want to sort of circle back around to home life and family life and stuff later on in the show. Cool. But I do want to talk a little bit about your choice to settle in Wanaka specifically and how that has affected your work, both in your kind of outdoor adventure-y stuff. You mentioned the skiing and the mountain biking, and then how that's circled back to your home life as well.
Yeah, cool. So as I sort of touched on, I was doing back-to-back winters between Europe. I chose Verbier in Switzerland as my northern winter destination. And Wanaka was actually the first place I did a ski season, and I did my ski instructors up at Treble Cone. And the day I touched down in Wanaka at age 18, how can you not fall in love with this town? We've got the mountains, the lakes, which is the biggest seller. But I think for me, it was the people I met. I met a bunch of skiers and a bunch of locals here that, back when I met them in 2001, 2002 are still, my best mates to this day. And I think it was just something about this place that just welcomed me with open arms. And it's very like Scotland. Don't get me wrong. I do miss Scotland and I do miss my family like crazy. So it's not an easy decision to make to up sticks and live on the other side of the world. But it was a very gradual process. So, over the years, going to and from and Wanaka, I think it's just got it all for me. And I moved here officially before I met my husband. So it wasn't like I was moving here for someone. I guess I was moving here for the lifestyle and the people I met. So I'm pretty in love with this place. And the more time I spent in New Zealand, the more I realized the whole country has got so much awesome stuff to offer. I've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, and because you are definitely one of those photographers who your environment like is, through your work 100%. There's no way to remove. If you left Wanaka, your work would look completely different. Yeah. So I'm sure a lot of photographers relate to that. But to transition now into kind of the main topic of today's show around storytelling, how did you kind of land on the sort of classic kind of photojournalism style of photography that you have now, especially in your farm life work? Were there like photographers that you were looking at specifically, or was it more of a kind of intuitive style that you landed on?
I think it's more intuitive than I'm definitely inspired by a lot of amazing photographers out there, but for me, maybe it stems back to my art school days, is that my sort of almost rebellions against following trends. I think, when I was just shooting skiing and biking, and I didn't really have too much a care in the world about making lots of money, or I was just traveling, and I just shoot what I saw, and I shoot what was happening. And very early in my career as a ski photographer, someone said to me, if you took that skier out of the photo, would it still be good? And that's something that stuck with me for years, thinking, it's not, we've got so much more to tell than just that one thing. So, for me, one of my big inspirations is light. I mean, any photographer would be interested in light, and it can just be as mundane as how the light comes through the window onto, that chair, or the way that the trees move in the afternoon in your garden or something. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to go out in the backcountry into the middle of the mountains to be telling those stories. It could be as simple as something at home. So I think, the storytelling thing is definitely resonates from travel and telling the backstory to a ski or a bike adventure. But maybe it comes down to also, my desire to previous desire to be a filmmaker, and that, it's lovely when you can get a collection of images together and tell that story through a multiple set of images. I hope that's answered that question.
No, it definitely does. And I get to mention what you said earlier about, like, if you removed, say, the skier from a photo, is it still a good photo? It's like changing that mindset of, like, you're taking a photo of a thing to taking a photo about a thing. You're trying to, it's not just like capturing the moment. It's like trying to sort of layer through all what the thing you're taking the photo of, what's that all about? No, you've nailed it. Exactly. And I think that's, I do think that people, being born, being able to sing, or being born, being able to, write beautifully or something, it to a certain extent, it's something you're born with, just with that eye of noticing things that other people might not notice. And what's cool is that every photographer or anyone out there has got a different way of looking at things, and it's how you interpret that when you take those still photos that really resonates who you are as a photographer. So that's what's cool about it as an art. Is like, people will try and see things. Everyone sees things in different ways and tells stories that a different way than someone else would. So yeah, absolutely. And so, sort of, and carrying on with storytelling and how it relates to your photography. Each time you go to take a photograph, are you, like, how important is it to you, like, the process of that photo telling a story? Is it a conscious thing every time you're pushing the shutter, every time you're picking up your camera, or again, is it a more intuitive kind of process for you?
That's a really interesting question. I sort of lean towards saying it's more intuitive. Oh, well, no, not necessarily. I guess it depends, and this is probably where we can talk about personal work versus sort of commissioned work. I obviously got a few different clients in that, I work for editorial, I'll work for commercial, and then I'll sort of have my personal work as well. So I love getting a brief from a client and trying to interpret what their vision is and what they're trying to tell and what they're trying to sell their brand or whatever, and trying to get into their space and work it out what it is that they're trying to achieve. And through interpreting that brief, I am then able to, I guess it's like, I don't know whether it's just my brain, but I kind of have to like switch on my photography brain sometimes. And if I get given that brief and I'll suddenly, like in a space like I am now, I'll be like, right, you need to tell a story where, everything for here's and say it for sale, and I'll suddenly, everything will change and I'll be able to go, oh, well, if I'm trying to sell that cushion over there, then, if I could get someone to sit like, you can suddenly start interpreting things in a different way if you get given that brief. But then when you sort of flip to the other side, when there's no brief and it's just you and you're shooting because you want to shoot, you're telling the story of what's inspiring you at the time. And I guess this is where we come around to talking about sort of my farm life. And yeah, your everyday life can feel very mundane to you, but to someone else, it can be, quite different or quite beautiful. So living on a high country merino farm in the South Island of New Zealand it's a pretty special place to be and to bring up two sons. So I think I realized a wee while ago that I really need to document this, and it's hard not to. And especially when there's beautiful light, or there's lots of sheep out there as stock. There's various things happening. It's hard not to want to reach for your camera all the time. It's usually the times when I don't have it, I want it the most. But yeah, I think that's about all I have to say on that.
The idea of capturing your home life may seem a little mundane to people. People like you're scrolling Instagram and you see photos from all over the world, and people get excited about going out there and photographing the new, the exciting, the unknown. What have you learned about capturing your home life?
As I sort of touched on before, I think it's about what you see as an individual, as an artist, and how you interpret that. What you see, it's really hard. I'm not going to lie, it's really hard. You can go day to day to day, and I have to actively remind myself to keep shooting, because your life, it gets busy, and you got kids and you're rushing out the door, and I think almost this thing we've all just been through has forced us all to slow down and to look at the small things, and really sort of take a breath and have a look at things that may seem mundane to you. But I follow a few awesome Kiwi photographers on Instagram and the AIPA and stuff like that, and they set some awesome challenges during lockdown to keep shooting and keep your eye in, and it was really fun. They had this sort of still life project, and then they had a week-long thing where you could take a still life of anything in your house or anything anywhere, and then obviously things like a portrait of who you're in lockdown with, and suddenly I was like, the boys sitting there at breakfast with the morning sun coming in, or that flower on the windowsill with that's blowing in the breeze, or just tiny things. And I think it's again switching on that sort of photographer's eye, because you can get busy and it just passes you by, and you just I think keeping active is really important, but also not beating yourself up on sort of trying to feel like you always should be doing it, you always should be shooting and whatever, and just finding that balance.
Have you noticed, I guess, the way you approach photographing your home life in terms of like a thing in regards to storytelling, when you're so close to the story to the point where it doesn't feel like a story because it's just your life that you're living? Like, how is that affected like your thought process when you're having to, I guess, look at your own life in a slightly more removed way to go, where is the story here? Or
Well, I guess I'm pretty fortunate in that obviously I live on this beautiful high country farm, and it is quite unique, and there is so much to shoot. So just trying to think about what people might, well, not even thinking about what people might want to see, but just telling a story about our day-to-day lives and sort of what my husband's up to on the farm. I don't really know about that one, to be honest. It's a tricky one.
No, it was a slightly sideways question, but to, I guess, transition now into talking about your project Heal the Earth. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that project, what it is and what drew you to it? Oh,
yes, absolutely. You won't get me to shut up on this one.
Please don't.
So I've mentioned before, I live on a high country merino station in just outside of Wanaka, and it's been in my husband's family for over 100 years, so that is a long time. My boys are fifth generation, which is something incredibly special and we're very proud of. About 3 years ago, my husband started looking into soil health and what it meant for us as a farm, and how we could reduce our input costs and try and make ends meet a bit better and do the right thing by the environment. And he started, I grew up rurally in Scotland. My father was an agronomist. I'm not foreign to the agriculture world, but when my husband started talking about all this stuff, I became surprisingly interested. I was like, oh, okay, no, this is cool. This makes loads of sense. I think I've always been a little bit of an environmentalist and trying to do the right thing as far as you can in terms of the environment. And what I learned through this new method of, well, it's not even new method of farming. It's, I guess it's a new tagline as regenerative agriculture, regenerative farming, is that farmers are starting to work with nature instead of always fighting against her. And in terms of climate change, it's got huge implications in drawing down carbon and purifying water and growing a nutrient-dense food. And I was like, oh, this sounds really interesting and really positive for the future. And I think many parents out there will agree that a pivotal point in their life is becoming a parent, and then suddenly thinking, God, what's the world going to be like when, our boys are my age, or, are we going to be able to leave it in a better place than we found it? And I think for my husband, he really, if our boys ever want to take over the farm, that we leave it in a better state than we found it. His journey into learning about how to better manage the farm got me really interested. But I personally think that every human being in the world needs to care about this because we all eat. And it was almost sort of like I was listening to all these. He showed me lots of podcasts and listening to this, and I was like, "What? Well, why doesn't everyone know about this? This seems like such a solution to so many of the world's problems, and why aren't we all doing this? And why aren't we all supporting farmers that are farming this way?" So I suddenly put two and two together. I was like, I'm a photographer, storyteller, and there's a really cool story to tell here. I really need to tell it. So that's what I'm doing. It's lit a fire under me, like I wouldn't have ever thought, mountain biking, skiing, cool stuff, adventuring to farming. It's like, I guess it's something that has made me incredibly passionate and made me really want to shout this from the rooftops. And I've always slightly thought, how am I going to give back with my craft? And I feel like this is my calling to be able to give back. So I started documenting what he was doing on the farm about 2 years ago. We're still very new in the process, so there's a long way to go. But on documenting what he's up to, because I knew that we'd want to look back and go, wow, look where we started from. So I started an Instagram page, and then the pickup was crazy. Like everyone was so interested, like urban people, rural people, people from overseas. And I'm like, wow, oh, that's cool. A bit like me, you know, I'm not a farmer, I'm not a scientist, I'm a photographer. And I was like, oh, that's super interesting. We can clean up our waterways this way. We can put carbon back in the ground. We can grow nutrient-dense food to feed our families. We can increase biodiversity and stop spraying chemicals on the ground. And I was like, right, okay. So it grew from there. And then the wonderful guys at Canon do this grant where they give some money to people to realize a personal photography project. And I'm not going to lie, I've entered a few times, and I think the last one I did was a base jumping story. Yeah, let's go, chase some base jumpers. Does it really mean anything? Now I look back, I'm like, no wonder I didn't win. It didn't mean much at all. But this time around, I put my heart and soul into an application and put it out there, and yeah, they gave me some money. So that's what I've been up to for the last about 7 months. And I wanted it to go beyond our farm because we're just a tiny little speck in the grand scheme of things. And there are farmers all over New Zealand who are doing incredible things. And people need to know. Funnily enough, there was a country calendar. We all love country calendar, right? a few weeks ago. Yeah, with a farmer who has helped my husband a bit and has been in the game a bit longer than us. And the pickup from that, even people like, wow, urbanites, this is cool. Why don't we know about this? Why isn't every farm doing this? And it's a sort of thing it's scary to farmers to think about changing stuff. But yeah, I just wanted to tell a story and tell it to New Zealand and all the world. So I cooked up a few trips to do and found out all these farms. And the more I knew this would happen, the more I sort of started digging, the more I found people doing awesome stuff and wanted to visit them all. I had to cap that to 10. So the North Island trip was the big one. So in March, luckily just before the whole corona crisis, packed my bags and went off, and VW New Zealand were absolute legends and lent me their brand new Grand California camper van. So I had a camper van, just me, little old me in this massive camper van, and I toured around the North Island for a week, visiting the most inspiring farms and people and telling their story through photography. So I have now got all the images and all the stories, and they're all sitting very safe on my hard drives. And because I've just had 9 weeks of mumming 24/7, I haven't had the time to put it together yet. But I am longing to get into it and put the piece together and watch this space. I'm going to be coming to hopefully to a city or a screen near you where you can watch an interactive. The idea is to have an interactive exhibition. What that'll mean, I'm yet to find out because I'm yet to do the post-processing, but
Very
I'll
exciting.
let you know.
Yeah, cool. And that's really exciting. And I guess one of the questions I have for you is, how do you feel like your photographic voice, and even just a photographic voice in general, contributes to that kind of conversation? What sort of extra value does that add to? Because we're not the photos are just photos. Like, there's obviously the phrase, a photo has 1,000 words, but it's not sort of spelling out specifically in a way that this is how we fix the issue. But yeah, what sort of do you feel like how do you feel like your photography adds to the conversation?
It's a tricky one because sort of when I got the grant and was like, oh, right, now I have to do it. A lot of me was thinking, oh, I should really be a filmmaker right now because this is something that would, to make a film on this would be amazing. And I was like, oh, it's a big story to try and tell through still images, and I'm yet to sort of 100% discover whether that's going to work. I've had some editorial pickups, so there's a few stories coming out in some magazines, some big magazines soon, so keep an eye out. And then in terms of my personal project, I'm hoping by having this interactive exhibition where I can have these shots that I've got where people come to a space and have a look at these photos that might not be your regular kind of, or they're definitely not your regular farm agriculture photos. And what I really want to do is just get people talking. Start a conversation. In each of the farms I've been around, I've also done on-camera interviews with each of the farmers, and they tell their story and what their views are on this topic. And I'm hoping to cut that together with my still images and show this at the interactive exhibition, and then people can. I just want to get people talking.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because obviously, like you said, the medium of documentary filmmaking sort of feels like a natural direction to go with this kind of story. Like environmental issue, like talking to farmers, what they're doing. It screams like sit down interview documentary film. But I think what you just said there is really beautiful because like a documentary film is the conversation. It's a very strong voice. It's a very controlled, contained viewpoint and sort of a whole all-encompassing package. Whereas, like you said, you want to start a conversation, it's almost like photography is more of a seed to a conversation.
Yeah.
Because there is no strict verbal voice attached to it, people bring their own conversations, and it is just a sort of a seed and a starting point for people to discuss the issue.
Yeah, no, I really like the way you put that. That's indeed, and yeah, I think just, yes, as you say, starting a conversation and getting people interacting. I was a bit worried, obviously, with the Corona crisis that it was we're not going to get together in a space again, and a few people have said, oh well, no, don't wait, just put it online. And I'm like, I don't just want to put it online and for people to be scrolling and isn't that another pretty picture or whatever. It was so bombarded with imagery at the moment, with our social media lives, that getting people to actually stop, come together, and talk amongst each other is something really important, I feel. Hopefully I can pull this off.
It's really cool. It's really exciting. It sounds like it's going to be a really interesting experience when you get people in the room.
Yeah, let's get some people together, both in urban and rural environments. So we definitely want to bridge that gap between urban and rural, and get people thinking about where the food comes from.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Camilla. To finish us off, to finish off our show today, what advice would you have to young photographers who, it's different to when we first started photography. It's the monster that is Instagram shapes a lot of young photographers coming through, and there's a lot around sort of making a pretty picture, making a picture that stands out on its own and is just like cool and pretty and fun. What would you tell to young photographers about the importance of lacing their photography with a strong backbone of storytelling?
Yeah, it's tough out there. Even having been in the game for however many years, sort of, I think I'm about 14 years, I guess, a professional photographer. Instagram and Facebook and stuff didn't exist, and digital was only really just taking off. But now social media is your best friend and your worst enemy. It can inspire you and engage you and make you want to get out there and go do stuff, but it can also mentally it can be a real stickler. You're looking through and going, oh, why aren't I out there? Why didn't I take that? I guess sort of for me it stems back to being an anti-trendsetter. I think that people are a bit bored of seeing the backs of people looking out of a view, or just there's all the trends, and I just try not to be a trend follower, be a trendsetter. I know that sounds really rubbish. I'm trying to put this, just do what you do, don't do what other people do. And I think it comes with an age. a sort of simple art of not really giving a damn what other people are doing, and that takes confidence and it takes experience. And I don't get me wrong, we all struggle with it all the time. But just listen to your own voice and do what you feel is right. I'm a big believer in gut instinct. If something is getting your tummy in flutters and making you feel like you want to really just do it, go for it. But if you feel like you're sort of shoveling whatever uphill and you should be doing that because old mate next door's doing it and they've got all those lenses and those cameras and they should be much better, and just do what you believe you should be doing instead of trying to follow a trend, and keep shooting. The biggest, keep shooting. Get out there.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well,
I hope that's helpful.
It definitely is. I think, like just obviously being aware of what's out there, but not being dictated by it. Following your own voice, following your own gut is really important.
Don't get bogged down by. Remember, what was it? I had a really good quote. It's like, don't compare your behind the scenes to everyone else's highlights.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, you're looking at the best of polished life on Instagram. Like, it's not their reality.
Yeah,
it's not your reality. So show your reality, and it might surprise you.
Awesome, fantastic. Well, I think that's a great place to finish. Thank you so much, Camilla, for coming on the show. I really enjoyed having a chat with you.
Oh, it's been great. Thank you so much, Ben, for having me. And thanks so much to Canon for this opportunity. Yeah. I mean, who doesn't love talking about themselves for an hour?
Yeah, totally. Awesome. And we're going to have links to all of Camilla's work below. And we're going to be keeping an eye out for how Heal the Earth progresses and develops. And we'll be looking out for that. It'd be great.
Cool. Thanks so much. Lovely to chat.
Cool. Awesome. Alrighty. Until next time, guys. See ya.